Now, let's get somebody else's thoughts now. The wonderful Amy Gallagher, who is ex-NHS nurse and commentator at the New Culture Forum. Amy, fantastic having you on the programme.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
And those who might not know, I made a documentary very recently with the New Culture Forum, which has gone down a storm. Telegraph picked up on it quite big last week. And really, actually, the talent and the hard work and a lot of the research and the writing behind that documentary was Miss Gallagher here. So round of applause to her. She is the wind beneath my wings, so to speak, and frankly deserves all of the praise because she is excellent at what she does and brings many important topics to light in the public domain. Right, let's talk about this one now, which is, I don't really understand this. Doctors who change gender are allowed to scrub past wrongdoing from the public record. What?
I know, this is extraordinary. This is the true extent of trans ideology in the NHS. We didn't think it could get any worse. This effectively means that bad doctors, incompetent doctors who have sanctions or suspensions or complaints against their name, if they say they are trans and they're transitioning their gender, they can effectively also transition from a bad doctor into a good doctor because all of those sanctions and complaints can be scrubbed for their new identity. I mean, this is the sort of madness that we were told wouldn't happen under gender ideology, and it is exactly what is happening. And this has real implications for patients, because patients, if they are concerned about their doctor and they want to look at his or her history, they can't now have access to that doctor's history. They can't see online, for example, whether they have suspensions or complaints against their name. And they also can't request a doctor of a certain sex, because they may say, well, I'm female, I want a female doctor, and they'll go online and it will say that the doctor they're having is female, but it's only because it's a male doctor who's changed into female. So this is just opens up all sorts of risks, actually, and I can't believe it's happening.
I mean, I don't even understand the thought process behind this. As if, you know, if you were a man and now you want to identify as a woman, you've changed completely into a new human. You've been through some sort of magical metamorphosis. And perhaps the fact that you did all these dreadful things as a doctor beforehand was because you were fighting this gender battle in your mind. I can't even begin to fathom the logic behind any of this. But thankfully, one might say, Wes Streeting, who is Health Secretary, has said that trans doctors' disciplinary history must not be erased, so a beacon of common sense there. But can you explain to me who's behind this sort of concept and why anyone would even give this credence?
Well, this is the General Medical Council have done this. And I think it is exactly what you say. I mean, it's quite unbelievable, but there is an idea that if you change your sex, you are changing into a whole new person. I mean, it's remarkable, but it's very concerning because we do know, for example, so there's 62 doctors working in the NHS who have, according to the General Medical Council, have changed their sex, and we can't, as patients, we don't know about it. But what we do know is that, for example, male prisoners in prisons have far higher rates of committing sexual offences than the general, who say that they're transgender, right? Male prisoners who say that they've changed sex or that they're trans women, they have far higher rates of committing sexual offences than the general prison population. We also know that men who dress as women or say that they're transgender, there's a proportion of those men who are likely to be suffering from paraphilias like autogynephilia or exhibiting other sexual fetishes. Mm-hmm. These men do pose a risk to women in a way that ordinary men maybe don't, okay? So we now have male doctors who could say that they're women, and they may well have had complaints against their name from women who were concerned about inappropriate behaviour. And now that would also be scrubbed if they had said that they've changed their gender, and they don't need to undergo gender reassignment surgery or anything. They can just say that they've changed gender. Right. I mean, it feels like a conspiracy theory, but it's real.
One assumes, and let's sort of break that down a bit, because paraphilias, autogynephilia, let's just explain that for people going, you what now? Paraphilias are sort of like, let's say, coexistent perversions, for want of a better word, fetishes, and autogynephilia being one of them, which is sexual arousal from dressing up as a woman, essentially. It's not just something you do because you think you're a woman, you do it because it gives you a kick. And I I think it's never really been publicly stated, no research, because research is way too taboo, the percentage of men who say they're dysphoric, who actually are, in fact, people with paraphilias and autogynephilia. I would imagine the percentage is pretty high. And so you're basically saying someone who gets sort of strange sexual arousal from pretending to be a woman or accessing women's spaces can then, if they've done anything weird, have their record wiped because they've changed gender as a woman, which would then give them even more access to those women's spaces.
Yeah, and the NHS is facilitating all of this. This is what's so concerning. And I do appreciate, Wes Streeting coming out and saying that this is a problem, but, what is he actually doing about it?
Right.
You talk, but I don't see any politicians, making any changes within the NHS. DEI is still very much rife across the NHS. Wes Streeting recently said it's gone too far. Well, okay, but these roles are still there, and none of this stuff is being rolled back on. And as you say, it puts women at risk. It's really concerning. It's really actually quite perverse and quite dark. And we're allowing men to essentially play out their sexual fetishes in the public space,
right,
with patients and people who are going to be at risk, like the case of the recent case of Dr. Upton, a male doctor who says that he's female, who's then started using female changing rooms and making women feel very uncomfortable. I mean, I don't know enough about him, but he may well be suffering from a paraphilia like autogynephilia, and he's being allowed, the NHS is essentially collaborating with him, right, and allowing him to do that.
This is what is just so extraordinary in all of this. Amy, thank you ever so much. You've done such brilliant work in this particular space, and thank you so much for helping me make that documentary, but with the brilliant New Culture Forum. That's Amy Gallagher, ladies and gentlemen.